this thing.
Check. Sure, the sound is working the way it's supposed to. Sound check. Having audio. Good, excellent. Thank you. You're ready to go, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. All right, we will call our regular council meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. And I will start out with our land acknowledgement statement. The town of Colhurst is located in Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Indigenous peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our community. And we'll get started here with the adoption of the agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda? I'll make the motion. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. And then we'll now look at the adoption of the previous minutes. So first of all, we have a regular meeting of council on November 15th. Can I get a motion to approve or adopt those minutes? Great, thank you. Any discussion? Public question, all in favor? Wait, oh, did you have a discussion?
No.
Okay, great.
Jump it again.
Okay, Carrie, we'll hold it. Okay. All in favor? And that's Carrie. Carrying on. Now we'll move on to the minutes from our finance committee meeting on November 22nd. Can I get a motion to adopt those minutes?
I move to adopt the minutes of the finance committee meeting of November 22nd, 2022.
Thank you. Any discussion? Public question, all in favor? That is carried. And we do not have any citizens without formal notice today, so we'll move right on to the business of council. Starting with the deliberations for the 2023 operating capital budgets. And so I am making a motion that council accepts the recommendations from the finance committee meeting on November 22nd, 2022, and that council approves the 2023 operating and capital budgets. This year, I think that we've gone through a really good process, and I'm really excited about where we got to this year and moving forward. And I know that you talked about changing this process a little bit for next year, but I think it was really, really great for us to be able to go through, and I'm very happy with the product that we came up with. So I'm now going to open it up to any discussion. Go ahead, Councilor Florence.
Thank you. I too am very pleased with the breakdown in our process, especially at the finance meeting on November 22nd. I'm very happy with the hard work staff has done, like you said, and working with council to come up with really solid solutions. I did have a question through the mayor to the CAO, if I may. I am looking for budget clarification on budget item put forward in the package tonight from the finance committee. After thinking about it more, I'm not completely sure that I'm in favor of spending the $1,500 on the web and app upgrades. And I'm wondering if there's a more cost-effective way to look at this without purchasing an entirely new system. So have we considered partnering with our current providers to do the upgrades at a lower cost, or is part of an ongoing agreement with our current providers?
Through your worship to Councillor Florence, yes, if you recall the motion, it's actually, it's up to a certain dollar amount, and what we would propose is putting out a request for different providers. So working with the current provider is definitely an option as well, and see what it is that he's able to provide. Ultimately, it will come down as to what's going to be the most functional for the organization, for council, for the community.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Any further discussion?
We had a lot of good discussion on that.
All right, if there's none, I'm going to call the question. So again, I can read the motion here. So I'm moving that the council accept the recommendations from the finance committee meeting on November 22nd, 2022, and that council approve the 2023 operating and capital budgets. Call question, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. So we're now going to move on to amend our next item, which is to amend the procedural bylaw to update responsibilities. And Councillor Florence does have a motion here. So I'll let you take that.
I'm sorry, I was totally gonna ask more things. Anyway, it's okay. I was gonna ask a question about the capital budget. Are we still, we're past 8, right?
We are.
Oh, okay,
We just
sorry.
voted on that.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I'm half asleep today, don't mind. Okay, so I'm going to move ahead with the next motion. I move that council amend the procedural bylaw by deleting the word CAO in section 16.1 and replacing it with agenda setting committee. And B, amending section 12.1 to read the CAO shall ensure that minutes show the names of those who voted in opposition to a motion or bylaw.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? There's none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. All right, we're taking right along here. So moving on to the council remuneration policy. So Councillor Ackerman has a motion here. I'll turn this over to you.
I think you missed one there. There's,
Oh, did I?
yeah, you missed the development plan.
What's the section?
Oh, I too, am not,
Sorry.
I'm not still up for much. All right, well, moving back. We're going to establishing a municipal development plan working session. And this is you, so that's great. So go ahead.
So I move that the council instruct the CAO to arrange a working session with Forsk to review and deliberate the existing Cohorts municipal development plan. Just to add a little bit of context to this, I do believe that we need to look at our long-term visioning for the municipality. And this is something that we should be aligning with our strategic plan, making sure that everything's in alignment. So I'd like to kind of have those higher level discussions so that we can kind of formulate the proper plan moving forward to reach our goals.
Thank you. Any discussion? Go ahead.
If I could, thanks. So the goal is an update or to have a greater understanding? Like, are we looking at aligning it with our strategic plan? Or are we like a little bit of all of that? Is that?
I do believe a little bit of all that. I would like to see just kind of those higher level discussions being taking place. We can look at the municipal development plan and see if it aligns with what we're wanting for the future. And if there's parts that are in alignment, we can maybe modify things that are not in alignment and keep the ones that are, or just kind of make sure that everything's kind of coherent in our direction for the future.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Go ahead.
If I may, Your Worship, just add, along with what Councillor Ackerman's identified, well, it's not stated in the motion. I would attempt to organize this with Forsk as soon as possible. But it would be advisable to actually undertake this with the new CAO when she or he is in position, so that they have an understanding of your municipal development plan in full as well, and are part of the conversation moving forward, if there are amendments or changes to the MDP.
Great, thank you. If there's no further discussion, I will.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say that I too am really excited about this, and I know we talked a lot about future growth, and not just for the term, but for 10, 20, 30 years. And we talk about the layout of our town a lot, right? Like highway access, back road access, direction for growth, where to put new schools, where to put future needed infrastructure, and how to work with the county and Lethbridge as our borders grow. So I'm very, very excited to do this work and to do this session and to take the public along with us as we have the session and forge forward on our strategic goals.
Great. All right, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. All right, now we're moving on to the council remuneration policy. So we have a motion here from Councillor Ackerman.
I move that the council adopt the council remuneration policy as recommended by the Policy Bylaw Risk Review Committee.
All right, and would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I think when we look at this policy the way it is right now, what we're looking at doing is eliminating some of the tedious work that administration has to do with filing like our expense reports to make it a little bit lighten the workload and make it a little bit more streamlined for that. I do believe that we had spoken about needing pre-authorization to attend events and things, but with a policy like this, we would be able to attend events and not have to kind of get everyone's blessing before having to do that. I did have a question with regards to the amount that we were looking at for the remuneration. I know that we had done a wage comparison study and I think it was probably right around the time when I first were elected, and I was wondering if we would be able to review that information to kind of see where we align versus other municipalities. I know at the time it was mentioned that it was kind of hard to compare them based on the way that the different municipalities were remunerating their councils. So it was just, I'd like to have a second look at that information prior to voting on this, just to make sure that we can be in alignment with kind of what the area is and make sure that we're compensated in an appropriate manner.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Go
Yes,
ahead.
yes, actually, I think, I'm not sure what numbers were used to determine sort of that average. But this is kind of a difficult time to make that determination because, if we're looking at the past couple of years, those would be COVID. And they wouldn't really reflect accurately the amount of work the council actually does on a normal basis. So I, in fact, find those numbers that are a little bit, they're a little low. I in fact have gone back through some of my T4s and find that I would be taking a revenue loss from that. And although I'm delighted to share my time and my skills with council, I frequently lose revenue when I attend council events. So I'm not sure that I would want to move forward with that set amount. So I'm wondering, I'm not sure what numbers were used to come up with that as an average, but I would just kind of question, if it was the last 3 years, COVID was in place, we were kind of coming out of COVID with a new council, I mean, it's not a very accurate representation, I think. And what we plan on doing. Maybe if we look at this past year, we might get a slightly more accurate. The past few months, we might get a more accurate representation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor
Thank you. This was brought to the policy bylaw committee, and then we made the recommendation to bring it here, just because of where it was at and needing to have council approval on it. But the idea, and if I'm explaining it right, jump in, it's like a blanket remuneration model that fits within our budget for next year without making any big changes. So while I agree with you, and I do think it is a little bit on the low end, it's something that just fits into our budget as it stands right now. And then as we grow and move forward in years with using the CPI index, we can also look at increases that way. So I'm kind of on both sides of this and undecided, but that's the point of why it's here. Maybe our director of corporate services can jump in a little further on.
Sure. So first of all, these numbers were based on taking the averages of what were submitted expenses back to the previous election. So the election from 2016 or 17 or so, 17. So it was going back all years plus this year's and up to not the last maybe 2 or 3 months, but up until about the summer-ish time. So they have it's a kind of a range of pre-COVID, over COVID, and then a little bit, if we can call it coming out of COVID still, then we're at that point too. As far as the idea of policy, Councillor Florence hit it on the head. It gives the framework to move with this methodology of remuneration, but the amount is definitely up for council's consideration. Whatever the amounts are, if there's nothing wrong with the content of the policy, then the policy in that way is, if council could go ahead with policy. One of the lines in the policy is the review process, which is this policy shall be reviewed by council in the final year of each term or more frequently as required. As part of this review, a market review will be conducted, and that market review is looking at the financial statements of at least 8 other municipalities in the most recent calendar year and determining what their actual and total compensation for councillors is in that regard. And so this gets in place a policy for making remuneration happen in a more what's the word? Each month is going to be, you're going to get each month, and it's going to be reliable and what that is, and not having to go through the motions of having, can I go to this meeting, can I go to that meeting? But the actual dollar amount affixed to that is absolutely able to be changed at any point. It would be, if the policy were to pass tonight, council could then say, yes, please do a review and find out what the other municipalities are doing. I think it would be useful to set a percentile amount. If all of these all these municipalities are what we're looking at. Where does this council want to be? Do you want to be 50th percentile? Do you want to be 75th percentile? Do you want to be 100th percentile? Do you want to be 25th percentile? Setting that target and then going out, finding out what all the municipalities are doing, and then basing it off of that and assigning it that figure. Rather than this, there's so many different factors to it. I did actually bring the results from that survey, and in overall gross pay, Colehurst is the lowest, but there's also only 5 members of council. When it's normalized, it puts Colehurst right around the middle, and so it's as far as the other municipalities. But setting that target percentile would then give an ability to have a fixed point that in each year we're looking at, or in each term when the review is happening, is affixing to that percentile and taking that percentile as a target to determine what the remuneration will be for the following term. And then part of the provision in here is using that, I've talked about a few times, that CPI, average CPI amount, and affixing that to each year then as well. So if in 2024, the amounts are 25,000 and 15,000, then 2025 would be plus the CPI, and 2026 would be plus CPI on top of that. And then in the 2029 election, in the year before that, then we would do another review and see where it sits at that point, and then go for that percentile amount or whatever method council at that time will get to go for.
For myself, I really like the structure of this. I think that it provides us with the flexibility to represent the community in a way that's easier. Administratively, there's also a lot less burden too, in a sense of not always having to do all the inputting of all the stuff. And I know sometimes I'm a last minute planner, and sometimes that means that it doesn't really, like, I just go when it's my own situation at that point, right? But I do really like the premise behind this. I would like us to consider looking at doing that review of those other communities, just to get an idea of that, because I do think COVID was a part of it. I think that the work that we're kind of moving with this council too is to be quite actively involved as well. And I think that even as we're looking into the future, one of the things I think with this role is that if people are losing revenue or losing money, you're kind of excluding some people who may want to potentially be part of a council too, right? And so I think that I would just be curious, I guess, to see where we sit, and I like your idea of kind of looking at that percentage and figuring out where we want to sit within that. Is my thought. So if I wanted to do a little bit of an amendment to this, could we? My proposed amendment is that we adopt it as recommended, but request that whatever we just called that, a review is conducted and brought forward to council for our January meeting. Yeah, go ahead.
I am respectful of our new budget constraints. I don't know if it's necessary then to have the external compensation rolled in. If these are our budget line items and we're working with this set budget, perhaps for now we sort of strike rolling in external compensation, and then that doesn't have an impact on our budget, and that allows us to have a little more sort of a equity or what we're sort of what I'm aligned with, what I'm accustomed to while we're going through this process.
Can you explain what that means? Like, what do you mean by that?
So within this document, it
Yeah.
says that if we're appointed to a board or committee,
Yeah.
that any of those funds received get rolled into the town of Colehurst.
Yeah.
So we're just one set amount.
Yeah.
So I would recommend and say if this amount is all internal to the town of Colehurst, it allows us to manage our budget. And it allows us to be able to look at those numbers. Clearly, we know that this is the amount that's coming through. And then what we receive for external committees, it doesn't have an impact on our budget, right?
So just for clarification, then you're indicating that we should
Strike that,
take that part, okay?
strike that piece and move forward with it without that piece in there while we're looking at, because also the averages that were being used in terms of coming to these numbers were based strictly on the amounts that were paid by the town of Colthurst. So they didn't include external board work or external committee work, right? That were paid externally.
Yes, it would have only been money that was paid from the town of Colchester. I don't know what boards or committees also
Yeah.
pay members of council to sit up at those meetings. I'm not aware that what that looks like.
So I mean, that might help to sort of offset some of that. Because then we know that we're being respectful of our budget, but at the same time, we're allowed the fair compensation for the work that we're doing, right?
Thank you. So I had a question about this when it was brought to our committee meeting too. So as I read it, this is if we get paid for sitting on an external board. But I don't believe that we have any boards that pay an external fee currently.
I think we have a couple of them actually.
Do we? I'm pretty sure
FCSS does?
And Green Acres Foundation.
they pay to sit on the board.
Yeah, they're paid separately.
Oh, okay, so that's news to me.
Yeah.
But the way that I do it is that I only claim, like they pay my honorarium and I don't claim it through here.
Yeah, we don't claim it through here. When you're paid externally, you're not claiming it as anything through here. And I think, not the library board, but Orsk isn't doing that. I think Orsk is another one that does it externally.
I'm not sure.
I'm actually not certain on that.
Yeah, I think there's a few of them. And I guess, so really what that indicates then is that it allows us to stay consistent with this number with our budget. I mean, those bits of money that roll in aren't going to have an impact on the budget overall. They're not going to be reflected in the budget.
But then I guess there becomes an inequity though for those who do not sit on those boards, right? And I think that that's where that comes into play too, is because like when I joined FCSS, I had no idea. Then all of a sudden they're like, give us your payroll information. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And like their remuneration is different than ours. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like we need to, in some ways, go back and rework this a little bit and find, there needs to be more information, I think, right? And I think it's more of that information too about like which of our boards and committees pay these things, because I think that needs to be factored into it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and you need to reflect the work that's put in. I mean, some of them, they do have a slightly high rate, but they're like 4-hour meeting and the prep work goes into it for hours. And,
Yeah, I know, like with FCSS, it's, I think it's $100. I believe ours was $125 or something like that right now.
That's an air
So-
wage.
So isn't that what it is? I don't know what it is.
I think it's about 109 or 119. something.
Oh, it's 119, yeah.
yeah.
So like it is technically lower than ours, but I don't know what the other ones are. So I think that I would just request that we have that information to be able to make a better decision on like looking at the actual dollar figure. Okay, so go ahead.
Just gonna say, do we want to push this back to like the first council meeting in January then, with that information and things on back to the table?
Yes, so I did have that amendment, right?
Do we want to set it that early of a timeline when we're looking at a new CAO coming in and needing to get a study done?
So, the amendment is, so the first part of the motion, and I've just added a and further, Councillor Ackermans will accept it as a friendly. Further, the CAO review the comparative municipalities and present council with a report at the January 3rd or 17th, 2023 regular meeting of council. Which one would you prefer? Do you want it back on the 3rd, do you want it back on the 17th?
I think the 17th is fine, like whatever, if that's as much time as you need. I don't think that this needs to be an official study, like I think that you can find a lot of the information on their websites. So,
Based on what it is, it's looking at the financial statements, they break it down in portions of salary and then benefits and allowances, the total amount. We would take those and 2021 is an interesting one because there are multiple, because there's an election, you have councilors who were on council, councilors who are no longer on council. So it would be taking the total amount paid for the mayors, total amount picked up all mayors in that municipality and having it be one, and then taking for there's 7 or 8 or 9, 10 councilors on the list, averaging it out to how many councilors currently sit on it, so it has its an average there as a total expenditure amount, and then averaging out to what those councilors on average receive for their basic remuneration and their allowances, which is the benefits and mostly benefits, maybe include the travel aspect of it. It's just most of the benefits if they're on the benefits program. But it's just looking at their financial statements and then assigning a percentile rank to them to do an Excel formula.
that would be perfect if we can have that.
So the way the motion stands, then you'd be approving the policy, but you'd be asking for more information. Are you wanting to postpone debate on the policy pending the information?
I think we postpone debate pending the receipt of the information. I don't want to roll into this while we're waiting on getting information on the funds, on the pay remuneration.
Okay, then prior to the vote, Mayor Montina has made a motion to postpone deliberation on the policy pending information review of comparative municipalities and present a report to the January 17th, 2023 regular meeting of council.
Excellent, thank you.
Sounds good.
So you just need to vote on the motion to postpone.
The motion that you read.
The motion that you read.
The motion
Yes.
that you read for me, thank you very much, yes. So, any further discussion?
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun again. I guess just from our conversation and from reading this, I think that the external compensation, actually, I think it is fair in a sense that like, if there are boards that are being paid, that be paid to the town and not to the individual. And so, I think that, for me, I think I should stick with the original motion and pass it, so I will be voting against the amendment.
And that's fair. And I suspect if you were putting 10, 12 hours into a different external board, that you might have a different view if you were being compensated by that board. It might look differently, right?
Just for, is there any further discussion on this part? If there's not, can I just get you, can I please read the motion again to you?
As soon as I type it up.
Okay.
Mayor Montina has moved to postpone deliberation on the policy pending more information from the CAO regarding comparative municipalities. And a report, I'm just going to change that, and a report to council at the January 17th, 2023 regular meeting of council.
Great, thank you. I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to, council travel and hospitality expense policy, and Council Florence, do you have a motion here?
Thank you. So I move that council adopt the council travel and hospitality expense policy as recommended by the Policy Bylaw Risk Management and Review Committee. So this is another one similar to the previous one. It's just kind of formalizing that process and hopefully making it easier for admin to process. So I don't actually have anything else to add to that. It makes good sense to me. It's just updated and clean.
Great, thank you. Any discussion on this item?
if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess, the item under hospitality expenses, for hospitality expenses involving the serving of alcohol, or $600 or more, the following details must be included. Do we have a policy around serving alcohol already that we would have to look at? I thought we had one that we can't do the serving of alcohol, that we would maybe have to look at before we are able to look at this one.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Caldwell, you do have a policy on alcohol. It's it's an incredibly thin policy on alcohol, and there's nothing in there prohibiting the purchasing of alcohol.
Oh, okay.
I think that was just more of a practice.
I get it, it might have just been, but it was always spoken as though it was related to that policy. Huh. It's funny how we entrench practices, isn't it?
Any further discussion?
I'm just going to double check that is correct.
Yeah.
I believe your alcohol policy is one line. Do you have the document? Do you have the document? At the discretion of council, alcohol may be purchased for special functions. That's the entirety of your policy. There's no definition of special functions, there's no parameters put around it.
Okay. It's a policy I should have looked at a little while ago. Thank you. Who's learning?
All right, if there's no further discussion, I just have a question for this. Did we have a policy on this before, or is this a brand new one that's coming forward?
There was a couple of policies that it kind of replaces,
Yeah, I can see them there.
detailing the rates and things.
Great, thank you. I think that this is really great. I think it, like you kind of indicated, it cleans it up and it makes it much more clear in terms of what an appropriate expense is and how to go about doing it. If there's no further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, the next one we have here is to establish an open house for resident feedback on wetland amenities. And Councilor Florence, you have a motion for this as well.
Thank you. So I move that council hold an open house no later than March 31st, 2023, for the purpose of collecting resident feedback on preferred amenities in the wetlands area, and further that the CAO report the collected feedback to council no later than April 30th, 2023.
Would you like to speak to that at all?
Sure. So this is something that we've been talking about doing for a while as our wetlands area is being finished and getting ready for spring. So we want to meet with our residents and get their feedback on what they would like to see in that area and use that feedback to form some planning around it. And so we're really excited to do that. I'm really excited to do that. So looking forward to it.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Go ahead.
I think this is a great idea. I think it's really good to involve the public. I know there's been a lot of misconceptions about what that land's going to be used for. So this is an opportunity for people to feel heard and provided, and then find a solution that works for the town. So I'm quite excited for this. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
I do have a thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I appreciate this as well. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. My question is that do we see this more as sort of as a kickoff that we might be using other methods to collect information, or is this just sort of a start of a process?
I think that's something that for all council, but if I can jump in, I think it's the start of a process.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
A very involved process.
Right, well, that's what I was thinking, or are we looking at perhaps like surveys and so it's just sort of a kickoff where we introduce it and we start to get feedback from the town.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Great.
If, your worship, if members of council would like to, if somebody would like to amend it, or if the mover would like to amend it after you have, hold an open house, including online portals for participation or something of that effect, then it does actually open an entire process.
Thank you. I can leave that up. Did you want to make those small changes in that? Or-
Sure. I will accept that friendly amendment to to open it up to online outlets as well. Do you want me to reread the motion? Okay, so I move that council holds an open house and provide online outlets to be able to participate no later than March 31st, 2023 for the purpose of collecting resident feedback on the preferred amenities in the wetland area. And then that feedback comes back to council no later than April 30th.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If none, I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried.
I'm excited to get that going, thank you.
It's that'll be awesome. Okay, the next item that we have here, I have a motion, I'm moving that Councilor Florence attend the Government of Alberta announcement on Highway 320 in Medicine Hat and the Truth and Reconciliation training in Standoff. So those are just some of those things that we have to do according to our current policy and, yeah. So is there any discussion on this item? If you'd like to, go for it.
Okay, so I'm sure you've all heard, it's very exciting. On November 25th, the Premier did an announcement for the twinning of the entirety of Highway 3. So as a community member, I was invited to go to that. So I did go to that, knowing that I might be getting or not getting approval afterwards, but just sitting on the Highway 3 twinning development, I felt it was an important thing to do. So it was really great to be able to be there for that announcement. It was very exciting. It's been a long time coming. Lots of years of work from the committee has gone into this, so it's really great. I traveled with two councillors from the county, the deputy reeve and one of the councillors, so that was awesome. And then for the Truth and Reconciliation training, that was also a previous training that didn't get a motion to approve. Unfortunately, I was actually sick and unable to attend it, but we still have to do the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, moving on now to governance to operations policy reassignment. And Councilor Ackerman, you do have a motion here.
Yes, I move that the council amend the utility bylaw, bylaw number 424-21, to permit administration to include the option of moving unpaid utility bills to taxation, as recommended by the policy bylaw risk review committee. So just to speak to this a little bit, I believe this was talking about limiting people having to go and shut off water. So instead of going to shut off water for unpaid bills, they'd be able to roll those unpaid fees onto their property taxes and then recuperate them that way. And then they don't have to go and kind of go through that process, because I think it's very administratively taxing to do that for everything that's going through there. So this is just kind of an easier way to make sure that we recuperate the money and reduce the workload on the administration.
Great, thank you. Any discussion on this item?
Just a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And what would be the process then if it's a person who's renting? Then we put it on the landlord's shoulders to recover those costs, is that?
If it goes through you, your worship, to Councillor Caldwell, yes, if it's for a renter, it goes on property tax, so the landlord would be the one who's actually paying that. This wouldn't be automatic for everybody. This just becomes another tool in the toolbox, one we don't currently have. We have some that are habitual, and we have others that are one time, so it depends on the process. If we have a habitual renter, then it would probably end up going on the tax bill. So it becomes the responsibility of the landlord to actually pay and to ensure that it's being collected.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? None, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Great, that is carried. Thank you. All right. Now, we're going to move on now to the second reading of the, no, we're not, skip ahead again. So for governance to operations policy reassignment, Councilor Florence, I see you have a motion here for that.
Yes, thank you. So I move that the governance, policies identified in agenda item 6I become operational policies under the sole discretion of the CAO or his or her designate, as recommended by the policy bylaw risk review committee. So this is something we've been working on for a little bit of time now, and I'd very much like to thank CAO Kaufman for his help in this area. We have been painstakingly going through our policies and updating them at the committee level and very much getting lost in the weeds. And so with this new model, it really aligns with how we're making things better. And I know I sound like a broken record, but these policies are entirely operational and we should be focused on governance. So happy to make this motion and can continue to work at the committee level on making recommendations on governance policies to council.
That's great, thank you. Any discussion on this? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a huge benefit for everyone. It'll actually put the operational policies under operations and the governance policies under governance. It'll make it a lot easier for policies to be maintained and having the proper people review them, I think is key. So I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I think that it's helping us kind of sort out all of our stuff and figure out who owns what and where this goes. So this is great. If there's no further discussion, I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried.
So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank the committee, they did
Just-
the hard work. They did the
This
lifting.
looks wonderful,
Committee's been very busy lately.
right?
It's
Holy
a busy
cow.
time. So with that, we're gonna move on to our next item here. And this is the second reading of the fees and rates bylaw, which is bylaw 439-22. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the second reading?
I'll make that motion to approve second reading of bylaw number 439-22, fees and rates bylaw.
Thank you. So Councilor Coppell made that motion. Any discussion on this item? Go ahead.
I have a question and then a different discussion item. So a question through the mayor to the CAO. So I'm including the fees for the animal control bylaw, but we don't have the animal control bylaw yet. Is that, I just wondered if you could just unpack that a little bit more.
Yes, thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Florence, even though we don't have the animal control bylaw in place, these rates currently exist in the various bylaws that are in place. This is in preparation of the animal control bylaw. So you're just basically establishing rates for 2023. We will have a slight disconnect until the animal control bylaw comes to committee next month and council possibly in January, more than likely in February.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple comments, just on some of the wording. When we get down to the bylaw enforcement under animals, it says sterilized dog is $20 a year. Would we be able to add license behind that? Because further down that list, we do have a dog fancier's license, urban hen license. So just to add a little bit of clarity on that. And then another thing that I noticed was the David A. Berry's social area, which I believe is at Minor Memorial Park. But if we could just maybe add that in there so that if somebody's looking at this and they're not familiar with where the area is, it just adds a little bit of context to what is rentable or where it is. Just to make it a little bit easier for residents to
So
understand.
can you provide me with the section that's in, or are we talking in the schedule?
Just in the schedule. So read under bylaw enforcement, it says animals.
Okay, so the first one was license.
Yeah, just if we could add that.
Okay. And then the second one was on park.
Yeah, just where it says David A. Berry's social area.
Yeah.
If we could just put like in, it's like Memorial Park or something, just to add a little clarity to where that is. So I think some of the new residents in town might not know where that is, so it's just providing a little more information.
Can we put at Minor Memorial Park?
Yeah, that's
So that people don't think they're renting Minor Memorial Park?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So consistency in the license and then just clarity of location. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the motion would read as amended.
As amended?
Yes.
And that would come from Councilor Ackerman, is that right?
Yes, if Councillor Caldwell will accept it as a friendly, then it.
Except that was a friendly.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you. So I would like to propose an amendment as well to the fee set out in the fee schedule under other fees and rates. To change the amount for the land use bylaw and area structure plan amendment fee from the proposed $1,500 to $1,000 fee, which is still an increase from the current $700. So we kind of discussed this previously, so I'm going to restate some of my points from the November 15th meeting. So I don't believe that there was enough information justified to make that jump for that fee for advertising fees and postage. When I had brought this up as a question during our town meeting, the committee of the whole and the presentation, It was stated it was to get more on par with others around us, and we talked about Coaldale being 1,000 to 1,200, and that could be scaled back on. So then on the November 15th meeting, when I had made that amendment, I ended up withdrawing it because we were going to get more information on that. And so at this time, I would like to again make that motion, that amendment. And again, I really believe this is less about a service and more about deterring folks from challenging an area structure plan or land use bylaw, and I don't think it's necessary. It is rare and unusual that someone would ask for these amendments. And again, I believe that if they would go that far down the road, that they believe that they have good reason to do so. Again, I will state that I believe the very backbone of government and policy is the ability to advocate and be able to influence and change in policy wherever possible. And I think that the increase would deter folks. Our strategic plan talks about equity, and this isn't an entirely equitable team. And then I guess a very real example of that is when we had an individual, they sent us a letter last December, and they weren't in compliance with the land use bylaw, and they went through the appropriate steps to have it amended, and then it didn't go through for whatever reason. And then they had to go and try to get the area structure plan amended. And I believe this was a little bit of a cumbersome process, but I believe that they were doing their due diligence and going through the process. And for me, it's not really about the answer, like whether it was the answer that they were given, it's about the process. And so I believe that this is an example of a time when a resident felt the need to go through that process and exercise their right as a resident in the landowner. And so I don't want to see that fee increase. And so to the best of my knowledge, this is the one and only time this has happened since being on council. So again, I would like that fee to be amended from the proposed $1,500 to $1,000 and thank council for consideration of that amendment.
Thank you. So we have an amendment of the amendment.
Yeah, so this would not be, this is a structural change, it would not be considered a friendly amendment. That's a significant change, right? So we have to vote on the amendment, the request to amend.
It can be done as a friendly if you are in agreement and council's in consensus on that. It can be accepted as a friendly. If you don't accept as a friendly because it's your motion, then it will be voted upon.
I feel like it's a significant structural change within it, and so I would request then that we vote on it, on that.
So if I can, just on our process, because last time when we did this, it was an amendment to this. And so that's how we voted on the last time. So if this isn't the process, then I need clarification. So when we had the first reading of the fees and bylaws, I made a proposed amendment, and the amendment would have been voted on, but then chose to withdraw it. So this is an amendment to the rates and fees bylaw.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, on second reading, so we're in second reading on rates and fees bylaw. You're proposing an amendment to it to amend the land use bylaw and area structure plan rate to be set at $1,000 and not accepted as a friendly amendment. So now you have deliberation on this particular amendment, what you're proposing, which is the process that you're actually following the first time that it was brought forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's not a rejection, it's okay, let's put it forward to debate and then we vote on that amendment, right? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, that was my understanding of what I was asking moving forward. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so as it stands, can we have the motion? So, as it's stated?
Yes, Councillor Florence moved to amend the land use bylaw area structure plan rate to amendments, yes, thank you. Be set at $1,000.
Okay, and so that's the one we're working on right now.
That's the one.
Okay. Okay. So with that, is there any discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious, do we know how often there are requests to update the land use bylaw or the area structure plan amendments?
Through your worship to Councillor Ackerman, to the best of my knowledge, there is one in 2022, which is currently underway. Beyond that, I'm not, if you give me a moment, I might have the report that council had received from our development officer on this.
I guess my thoughts on this are just, as Councillor Florence mentioned, you don't want this to be a hindrance for somebody to go through the proper process. I do believe that if we aren't seeing a large influx of these, like if we're seeing maybe one per year or something, I don't think that $500 is going to be anything. So I think if it was something that was happening like monthly or something like that, then, I would be all for increasing that value to make sure people are serious about it versus just coming through and just trying to, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, like push forward their thoughts or whatever. But I think if it's something that's happening so infrequently, I don't want to deter people from participating in the process due to financial reasons, especially with the straight with everything there. So I would be in support of the $1,000.
Well, I respect that approach. I think it's important, when we're hearing the cost associated with amending or with exploring a land use bylaw amendment or an area structure plan, the amount of work that goes into that from our staff and the amount of resources that go into that. And they say that the cost accurately reflects the amount of work that's going into it. We don't want to be seen as subsidizing services for residents, because that is if we're going to be doing it in this, then we should be subsidizing others, right? It's either all or it's sort of a none. So that's why I wanted the opportunity to debate, because I recall the conversation where we did ask to say, what is the resources that go into this that would accommodate that change in price? And I don't recall that we got that answer. And so that's why I wanted us to be able to have some debate on that, and then perhaps we can have that brought back to us.
Okay, if I may, I'm sorry.
No, I just had a question for, through the mayor to Councillor Caldwell, but so maybe we should just wrap this up first.
Okay, so currently we have 2 ASPs in the town of Culvers, the Greenwood ASP and the Meadowlark ASP. So those are the only 2 in play. However, as we continue to develop, especially in the Walker Quarter section, there are going to be further and further ASPs created. So this is actually addressing a potential future. So it's good that it's being raised. If a developer wants to put, for example, commercial development in an area that's been designated by a current ASP, that's currently designated as residential, then they'll have to amend the ASP before they can move forward with the rezoning application. Occasionally, we have individuals applying for ASP amendments, and that is actually rare, but we have one going on right now in the Greenwood Estates where somebody wants to deal with the driveway width. The amendment of the Greenway Estates ASP will involve a thorough review by the town's engineer firm, as it includes the amendments to the stormwater management plan. We're still actually waiting on getting a fee as what that would be. ASPs can be comprehensive documents which involve a review by staff or skin engineers. We do not have an engineer in-house to review these documents, so we have to pay a firm to do it for us. Looking at which municipalities have their ASP amendments set at $1,500. They are, for the most part, municipalities which do have significant growth development occurring.
Okay, so that was a reflection of the costs associated that we have to involve our engineers.
Time to review by staff, by ORS combined engineers, especially if they're involving the stormwater management or transportation, these other conditions.
Thank you. I have a question actually for Councillor Caldwell through the mayor. So I guess that just to your comment about subsidizing the service, because I guess like the very essence of our job is deciding where the money goes and budgeting and things like that. So whether through wherever that comes from, assessment rates, the only thing that is fully user funded in town is our utilities. So I guess I was wondering if you could clarify that comment, because that's no different than providing any other service. And so to say we're subsidizing it, it actually sounds a little bit far out to me, as opposed to just us choosing where to spend our money. Because again, the only thing that is 100% user funded is our utilities. So we choose where to put our money all the time, right? And so I don't know if that's.
So thank you, to the Mayor, to Councillor Florence. My understanding is as we're reworking our fees and rates, our hope is that we are setting them to actually accommodate the costs and resources that go into these. And so when I reference the hope that we're not subsidizing something, what I'm saying is that in order to provide an area structure plan amendment or a bylaw amendment for someone, that the amount of resources and work that go into this is going to accurately reflect what they're paying, or what they're paying is going to accurately reflect what goes into it, as what we're hoping for with all of our other fees and rates. So by not making it so, if we are coming out of pocket, if taxpayers are paying for engineering firm to review a area structure plan for an amendment request, that would be the taxpayer subsidizing that cost.
So,
Right.
sorry, just for.
And so that's, so in my mind, that doesn't feel like a very good use of taxpayer dollars. If someone chooses to make an amendment, then I think they would pay the cost associated with making that amendment.
All right, so we've had some good debate on this. Again, we're looking at the amendment proposed by Councilor Florence about reducing the fee to $1,000 from $1,500. And so at this point in time, I am going to call a question on this, and we'll proceed from there. All right, so call a question. All in favor of? Let's actually, can we read that amendment again one more time, please?
Yes, Councillor Florence moved to amend the land use bylaw area structure plan amendments rate to be set at $1,000.
All right, we'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Right, that is carried. Thank you. And so then our amended motion that we had was put forward, I believe, by Councillor Ackerman. And Sarah Kaufman, would you be able to read that once you're done typing it?
Yes, Councillor Caldwell. Actually,
The original.
the original is actually back to Councillor Caldwell.
Okay.
Councillor Caldwell.
Oh, yes.
Did you want to read it?
Can you
Moves that council approve second reading of bylaw 439-22 fees and rates bylaw as amended.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, as amended. I thought you were going to require my memory of the amendments that were being requested to put forward.
All right, is there any discussion on this? If not, I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So now we will go on to the third reading of the fees and rates bylaw. Go ahead.
I'll move that the council approve the third reading of the fees and rates bylaw number 439-22 as amended.
Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. All right, so now we're going to move on to the second reading of the borrowing bylaw, which is bylaw 440-22. Would anybody like to make that motion? Go ahead.
I move that council approves second reading of bylaw 440-22 borrowing bylaw.
Any discussion on this item? If there's none, I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And then would somebody like to make the motion for the third reading?
Sure. I move that council approve the third reading of bylaw number 440-22, the borrowing bylaw.
Thank you. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. All right. Moving right along here to the next item, which is the participation in the Regional Emergency Management Agreement. So this is something that we've been working on and looking at for quite a long time. And so would somebody like to make a motion to essentially explore, to support the,
I'll make that motion.
Sure. Would you be able to read out the motion?
Yeah, I would move that council support the town of Picture Butte's application under the Alberta Community Partnership Grant Program for the creation and operation of a regionalized emergency management program involving the municipalities of Coaldale, Lethbridge County, Nobleford, Picture Butte, and Barrens.
Thank you. Any discussion on this?
I guess thank you, sorry, just a question. So is it the town of Picture Butte that's heading this off, or is it the town of Coaldale that's heading this off?
Through your worship, Councillor Florence, it's the town of Coaldale that's coordinating the effort. However, they already have an ACP grant underway. The town of Picture Butte does not, so Picture Butte is actually going to be the host for the ACP.
Okay. That makes sense.
Any other discussion? I'm really happy to see that we're making progress in this area. I think that's something that it's really nice to see. something happening with it, and that this regional approach is really great too. If there's none, I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so we do have some administrative reports here. First, we're starting out with the Chief Administrative Officer report. Is there anything on there? We've got it in front of us. Does anyone have any questions, or is there anything that you would like to particularly highlight from it?
There are 2 points I'd like to add, but did you want to do council reports first?
Oh, I did.
Or did you want to do them after?
I'm missing everything today.
You're the chair, it's your prerogative.
Well, thank you. We'll go back to council report. Okay. Council report, let's do that now. Let's start with council report.
Thank you. Okay, so for my reports, we had the final staff community leaders appreciation event before the event on November 16th to work out the final details for the event we hosted on November 26th. I was able to attend a virtual Highway 3 training development meeting on November 18th. That was just the regular every 2-month meeting. Councillor Ackermans and I had a policy bylaw review and risk management meeting on November 21st. Councillor Caldwell, Mayor Martina, and I had an intermunicipal meeting with Lethbridge County on November 24th, and we had an awesome presentation from the town planner and county planner on the IDP. As mentioned earlier, I was able to go to the announcement for the twinning of the entirety of Highway 3 on November 25th. On November 26th, I met with the Community Futures Board for a larger than usual board meeting. And then also on November 26th, we hosted that community leaders and staff appreciation event. And want to thank council for the support in putting that on. And then lastly, I keep forgetting to mention this, so I do apologize, but I wanted to update council on the Queen's Jubilee Award nomination. So as you know, we decided to nominate 2 residents, John Coombs and Rosemary Roth. And so one of our nominees, John Coombs, was chosen to receive the award, and his wife Valerie was able to go to the ceremony, which was actually held this past Monday. And I completely missed the email and forgot to pass it on. So my apologies for that, but it's Valerie was able to go and get that award. And it was very cool that John was able to be honored in that way. So congratulations to the Coombs family.
That's great. Thank you. Councillor Ackermans, you next.
Thank you. Like Councillor Florence, I did attend the policy bylaw review committee meeting on November 21st. A lot of those recommendations were brought forward tonight. Besides that, we had the staff and volunteer appreciation dinner. I thought Councillor Florence and Deputy Mayor Contry did a great job in seeing that one. I thought it was a fantastic night. There was lots of smiles, lots of people having fun. So I thought that was really great to recognize the staff and volunteers within the community. On November 28th, I did have a South Grove executive meeting. We do have elections coming up for the executive again on the 15th. So I'm hoping to put my name forward to that. So if you guys will let me, I will pursue that. And then I guess just another ask that I have is just, if possible, it'd be nice to see some of the community meeting minutes being provided in the council meetings, so that we're just kind of aware of what's going on in some of the other communities that we're not part of.
Great. Yes.
Just going to ask if I can, through you, your worship, to Councillor Ackermans, included in the minutes packages at the council meetings?
Typically, in the past, we've had it recorded.
Okay.
So we go through our normal council meetings and go through the community minutes. So if we had questions about what we was doing, then we could ask.
Excellent. Okay.
Get clarifications on those.
Okay. Thank you.
I would like to make a motion that Councillor Ackermans be able to put his name forward for who's like the executive committee of South Grove. Is there any discussion on that? If not, we'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
And that was everything I had.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Caldwell.
Let me just check the dates here. From my last council meeting, I have attended, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the intermunicipal committee meeting on the 24th. That's a little bit disappointing. I did attend the online session with Alberta Munis, the LGFF, just trying to get feedback from municipalities about what that's going to look for, like for them moving forward. I was able to share some of our thoughts when we're having budget deliberations that may or may not include those as a regular part of our budgeting. And many other municipalities are doing the same kind of practices, which is a little bit disturbing. I think a lot of municipalities are very concerned about that. I also attended Green Acres. I had a few meetings with the Green Acres Foundation. And I'll speak to, I think I'll do a bit of an update a little bit later on that one. I did attend MSBA as well. And I did want to just mention that we're getting a number of applications coming forward to us for solar on people's homes. And so there are people that are going around the community and knocking on doors and talking to people about getting solar panels on the roof. And so it might be something that I know that there's been conversations with the fire department to look at, what that looks like from a risk management perspective. If there was a fire, what's involved? And I believe that they're going to be drafting something up for us as a practice. But my hope is that we might be able to connect the fire department with ORS so that we can use the GIS system to sort of map in where we have those homes so that they can just plug in that information and know what they're going into. Because of course, when they're going into a fire situation, they have to disconnect. If there's solar power, they have to disconnect before they can do anything in the home. It puts them at risk, right? So I just we're just picking up more and more of these applications. And my hope is that we are, we're really mitigating our risks around that. And I know that our fire department is aware of it and they're working on stuff, but I'm not sure they're aware of our GIS systems. So I was hoping we could bring that to their attention. As well, I also attended the staff and the community leaders celebration. And Matt, I have to say, I thought it was fantastic too. You guys did such a great job. And people really, really enjoyed themselves. And I think they really felt, did they not really enjoy themselves?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and I think they really felt the appreciation, they really felt the love, right? Yeah, and I believe that was, I think that was everything, thanks.
Thank you. All right, so some of the things that I've been doing have been talked about. One of which was the intermunicipal committee with the county, which was excellent in getting that presentation and getting a better understanding of what that looks like for us. I've also been doing a little bit with Chinook Arch. We recently had our executive meeting and just approved our budget. As you may be aware, I don't know if they call it the requisition, but essentially the fee that's put out to municipalities. There was a proposed increase and that was denied by the city of Lethbridge. And based on I think it's because it's based on the percentage of the population, that actually they kind of can determine what happens with that. So along with that, there was just a discussion on the direction of the budget and what that needs to look like for Chinook Arch. So along with that I went to the Mayors and Reeves meeting and some discussion happened there regarding Chinook Arch. And we will be having our next Mayors and Reeves meeting at the Chinook Arch building so that some of the Mayors and Reeves that are part of that can gain a better understanding of what supports that organization does offer us. The other thing that I did attend was the turkey bingo that was hosted in town here, which was a lot of fun. I got to be a big good color all night and I think that's gonna be my new job. And so a lot of fun and it was nice to see the community come together and participate in that. So that was great. The other thing was just with the celebration for our community leaders and staff, a lot of fun and I think you guys did a really great job organizing it and seeing it. So very thankful to be part of that and to see everybody being able to participate in that. And just all the different community volunteers that were there. It was nice to see them all in one room. The last thing I wanted to do was to do a little bit of a shout out. So as you might be aware, Parks and Recreation has Jess Walton, who she works with them, and she offers fitness classes here within town. And one of the things that she did recently was she did something called Glowbember as a way to raise funds for stocking stuffers for seniors in the Angel Tree. And the way that that works is that people bring a donation to participate in that event. And then this year, it was matched by Audiology First, which I believe is owned, or some of our local residents do work there as well. And then matched by the Parks and Recreation Society. So overall, in total, they raised $702 for that to go back into our community, which is really, really exciting and very awesome. So I was very, very happy to see that happened. So congratulations to them. And I think that that's kind of it for me. I guess the other really exciting thing that's coming up for me actually on Thursday is that I have my first Alberta Municipalities Safe and Healthy Communities meeting. There's been some stuff that's kind of been coming through lately. You may have seen that email I sent today about victim services. And last week, unfortunately, I missed out. There was a meeting on the ambulance service. And so I do believe we will be getting an update on that this week. And so looking at more of those items. So I'm excited about that. All right, now we're going to move on to the CAO report. And you said that you had a couple of extra items that might not be there.
Actually, I just have one, Your Worship. Received an email from Staff Sergeant Newman. He's not a Staff Sergeant, I just demoted him, I think. Mr. Newman, is he Staff Sergeant?
Yeah, I think he is.
Okay, Staff Sergeant Newman. My apologies, Mike, if you're watching. He just actually sent an email yesterday morning to say, just want to let you know that we were in the community on the weekend and conducted patrols, issued traffic tickets, and completed some check stops in the town of Coors. We checked over 100 vehicles. People were happy to see us and appreciated our efforts. We charged one person with impaired driving. So they do have a presence. We are sending them data. Thank you to our Director of Operations. He collects the data off the digital signs. There's mention of that in the report. And we actually provide that information to the RCMP. The back of those signs reads traffic flow, looks at speeds, looks at time of day, looks at the number of vehicles. And so for targeted enforcement, they know when to be where and can act upon that.
That's great. And in your report, you did indicate we have two of those machines.
We've got a second sign now, and it is up on 50. On
45th Avenue, we have one, and the second one is on 2nd Street right now.
That's excellent. Is there any questions from council? Oh, okay. Well, we got it. All right. Councilor Barnes and Councilor Ackerman.
Thank you. I just wanted to say about the bench. I think that's really cool that that you entered and we got the bench, and I'm glad that that was included in the report. I also think it's really cool that you put the report in the town news to be shared with the public. So I thought that was really neat. And I just wanted to pass that on.
Councilor Ackerman.
Councillor Florence beat me to the punch, but I was going to say congratulations on entering the contest and winning. And I just wanted to comment on Kevin's 33rd work anniversary. I think that's awesome. Thank you for your dedication to this company. Appreciate it.
That is amazing, yeah. 33 years.
Mike wasn't born yet.
He was very quick to point that out.
All right. So I will move that council receives the Chief Administrative Officer report. Is there any further discussion on that? I don't have a question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right. So now we have the Director of Corporate Services, a brief on town debentures. So I'm just going to turn that right over to you.
Thank you. So I tried to get as much information as I could in the written report here. But in general, the debentures are just loans that we take out through the provincial government. We currently have 6 of them, varying from, I think it's 20 to even 60 years that they get paid back. So debentures are, each municipality has a debt limit that they can take on debt, and these debentures then affect what that limit is at. I can't remember what the town's current debt ratio is and what the debt limit is, but it's something that the auditors look at every year and is recorded in the financial statements. So the 6 that we have right now, there's several that there's some discussions that have been happening. I started to wonder, hey, what if we just looked at paying these off? What do we gain out of that? What would it cost? So the debentures are, the way that the program works is municipalities apply to the province. They can apply each quarter. Then the province does a bulk borrowing from whatever the money markets are to borrow. And so it's not the same as paying back your car loan early or paying back your mortgage or prepaying on your mortgage. There's a set amount that has to be paid back. And the interest is incorporated into the payments. So paying back early doesn't end up saving tons and tons of money. You still end up paying the bulk of what was borrowed plus its interest. And some of these are, so of these loans, several of them are, the first 3 on the chart, water line, the fire hall, the fire's property, they were borrowed back before 2010 and 2006, 2004, 2009. The town was very different at that point. It was a much different situation. And so while these numbers don't look like very much, in that context, they could have been quite a bit, and it made sense to finance these projects via the debenture. Debentures are a great way for financing projects that have a long-term benefit to the community. And so it's the use of debenture is not something to be afraid of or say, wow, I can't believe we have this much in debt. It's a financing option, the same way that we use reserves, the same way that we use taxes. This is just one other avenue for financing projects. But we are now in a different year, in a different context, and we do have the capability of potentially paying off some of these debentures early. I initially reached out for the fire hall, and then followed the discussion about, hey, why not find out the rest real quick. I have not heard yet back from the province about what the payouts would be. However, based on the one that I got from the fire hall, the amount that was the payback was, if you look at the fire hall, the remaining and then the annual payment, it was roughly whatever the remaining amount minus 1 annual payment. So it would have saved paying it off early would save 1 year of payments, really. But it would give then, if that doesn't come off until 2029, and paying that every year, the town then has every year from 2022 or 2023 till 2029 to use that $16,000 elsewhere. And so it's just it's what is the benefit of paying early and having those funds to use now versus paying it off, or I'm suggesting mostly from the reserves that we have. So the other ones I looked at as far as what would be could be making sense in paying off early are for the water line, the fire hall, and the fire's property, and then paying those off through the reserves that we currently have. In the identified reserves for them, each of them has a replenishment program. So if funds are taken out of the reserves to pay off these debentures, each year money is going back into the reserves to replenish them. And they would take several years to get back to whatever that balance was, depending on the debenture and depending on which reserve was paid out of. The other one is so of those are the 3. The other debenture that we should, or council could consider paying off is the one for. It's only annotated as land sewer. In conversations, it is the land that was purchased in 2012 east of town, or near the sewer lagoons, and then in 2017, the idea being that it would be used to construct some stormwater management ponds there to deal with stormwater. Those plans changed, the projects changed, the scope changed. We were able to change where the stormwater could be done. It's been done in town and is functioning now. And so that land was sold in 2017. What that leaves us is then that we now have a loan that we're paying for that we don't own the asset for anymore. I spoke with municipal affairs and the province that handles the treasury branch that handles the loans, and this was not a concern to them. To them, it's as long as the payments are being made, they aren't concerned about whether the asset has been sold or disposed of or whatever it may be. The way that as long as the municipalities are making their payments, they're satisfied. If the town starts missing payments, then they will get involved, and they do have the ability to tax the town and get the money for those loans back if the municipality were just to stop making its payments. So it's not necessarily a cause for financial concern, or we don't have this asset. What we need to take care of this. It's just the situation just is. Fortunately, those funds that when it was purchased they're kind of just sitting in our unrestricted surplus. I think it was just an oversight in the year-end process in 2017, where those funds just weren't attributed and said where they came from. It's just some journal entries that I found. There's just I don't know. It's 2017. It's hard to, given who's in the organization still, it's just difficult to follow exactly what the thought process that happened at that point. But given that the funds are sitting there, it does make it possible, depending on what the payout amount comes back from the province, to make that payment on it. And so it's again just an option for council, or letting it sit there in the unrestricted surplus and letting the loan continue on until I think it's 2042. So there's various options. If all four of these debentures were to be paid, I'm estimating there would be about $115,000 per year that would then be reallocated elsewhere. And that would just depend on what those amounts, when the payout amounts come back, what it could be. It would be roughly around that area. So instead of going towards debt repayment, it can then be used towards services, or I have a list here. So we could either create a fund for council strategic priority projects. What that could look like is each year there's $150,000 put towards call it a strategic priorities reserve. And then it goes to that, and then each year council can use those funds towards something of strategic priority. It could be used to replenish the reserves from where the funds were taken. It could be used to reduce taxation requirements. It could be used to fund an FTE position for succession planning. It could be used to adjust compensation levels or remuneration levels. And then any combination of the above or any other idea, it's really an open book of how those funds could be used going forward. There's no decision required at this time. This is not something that needs to be dealt with. It's just an option that something could be dealt with. And we're just waiting back from the province to see what they get back and say and how much is what it would look like.
Thank you. Any discussion or any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question for this, for Mike, sorry, I'm so sleepy. So like, I guess I don't understand, like, isn't that a liability to just have like a loan on nothing?
I thought so. It's, I think the definition of a debenture, in your loan, if you get a car loan, your loan is secured by that asset that you purchased. If you don't make your payment, the bank will seize your vehicle or your house. A debenture is an unsecured loan. So it's not really, it's attached, but it's not attached. And so it's an interesting situation. The town can pay it back, or they cannot. When I say pay back, make a prepayment on it. The province is completely happy to let the town continue making its regular payments for the next 20 years. If we want to make a prepayment, then there's a slight penalty, but the bulk of that payment, the full payment still has to be made. There'd be maybe on a $1.3 million loan, there maybe be $50,000, $70,000 in savings, maybe. But it wouldn't be much more than that in a given overall. So that loan was 1.3 million. The interest payable on it was just over 700,000. The total repayment of that is just over $2 million. Because of how they do their borrowing, they need back that $2 million. And so the town would maybe be just under 2 million, but it's not going to be down to 1.5 million. It'd still be pretty close to that $2 million figure.
So if I may just touch on that, as Director of Corporate Services had mentioned, when the province looks at our debt capacity or debt limit, part of that calculation is what does the municipality collect annually in taxes? What does it have for assets? And it's not the assets that you can't sell, it's the things that you can get rid of. And as he stated, the three of us, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Pass, and I had very long conversation about, we've sold land, we don't have the asset. We were quite concerned about this, so we were relieved and a little amused by the response from Municipal Affairs that, you're paying it, just keep paying it, it's not an issue. We have the ability and capacity to pay it because we have a reserve, and we are collecting enough tax to continue to replenish the reserve. So yes, we don't have the asset. As far as Municipal Affairs is concerned, we've not defaulted on it. There's no indication in our finances that we would be defaulting on it, so carry on was the response.
Good question, Becca, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if we're not realizing much in terms of savings by paying it out, what might we be losing in interest if we have those funds sitting in reserves? Is that a loss? Like, do they balance each other out, or?
There's various ways of looking at the situation. So currently the funds that were used when this land was sold is sitting in unrestricted surplus. So it's at the end of the year, all of the revenues and expenses get totaled up and moved out and slid through the old accounts and accounting, the fund accounting charts, and kind of just be that end surplus. It just gets added to that. Just the accounting entries that were done in 2017, it just ended up that the 1.2 million that sold for just got moved into that unrestricted surplus. So it is earning interest right now in our bank account. It would be, I think it generates, our bank accounts generate about 4% interest right now. Prime plus, or prime minus a certain amount, and it's roughly around that amount. So $1 million of money sitting in the bank account, it's about, about $40,000 in interest that we're earning. So it depends on what the offset is. Do you want to earn, does the town want to earn that interest, or would the town prefer to have $67,000 every year that it can use towards something else? And so it's weighing those cost benefits.
So I would say it'd only be like $27,000 difference then, right? Because if we're earning $40,000 in interest and versus freeing up 67, wouldn't it just then be 27,000 in addition?
I suppose so, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I do math in such unusual ways, I think.
So I just have a question for you. So you're saying, so we took out, so I'm just gonna use the land sewer one as an example. So it was $1.3 million. And you're saying that like right off the top, regardless, like we have to pay that $739,000 in interest back, even though we, like, regardless, it's not like you pay it out early, you get a break on it.
Pretty much.
Okay,
Maybe we'll get a 50 to 70. I'm estimating
yeah,
$50,000 to $75,000 off of the amount. But again, I have to wait for those figures.
Yes.
I'm basing that off of the quote I got for the fire hall one. And that it was the amount that was decreased by was the amount of the annual payment roughly. Yeah, but because they do that bulk borrowing,
Yeah.
It's the province, we owe the province owes the money markets. And so the province has to give back, $1 billion, and so they have to get the money from whoever they lent the money out to give it back to those markets. So it's different than a car loan or a mortgage where you can make prepayments and and pay less on the interest.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
Well, thank you. I guess just like a comment in terms of our debt servicing limit, like, we don't have that amount in front of us right now, but, at one point, it might be prudent to pay off some of these debts so that we can, if we're looking at future capital planning or things like that, taking on new debentures, that we need to free up some of that room. The other thing, and I think we talked about this, is that for like a debenture, like we're never gonna be able to, for a huge capital project, because we're never gonna have enough in reserves to pay for it anyway, so we're going to have to take on that new debenture. So, yeah, this is all very interesting, but, yeah, I guess, after some time to think about it, I think that it would be interesting to look at this and see what it would look like to pay them off and what that would look like with their debt servicing limit and to take on one, like a new potential capital project or something like that. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say this is the first time that I've been seeing this listed debenture, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. Just a question, like, for a municipality, I know they're all different, but what does a typical debenture level look like? Like, are we heavy into debentures at this moment, or are we pretty big in them? Just to kind of get an idea of like how the municipalities might be looking at.
The best way to figure that out would be to look at the financial statements of each municipality and look at their debt limits and how much of their debt ratio. Compared to the municipalities, I don't know. I can look into that. But I don't know the number of debentures could vary drastically. We've got some that are ranging from 198,000 to 2 million. And we have 6. Some might have 15, but they're all for 200,000, or have one that's for 7 million, or whatever it may be. So and it would change depending on the municipality's financial situation as well, and what they can take on. So the best way we look at what the ratio is for various municipalities, and I can get that information.
Thank you. Just to kind of, I think like Councillor Florence said, I would be very curious to see what this would look like if we could pay off some of these. I do think that having the ability to not be handcuffed if we're looking at a major capital project down the road is beneficial to the municipality. I also do think that if we are saving $115,000 approximately per year, I think that we could do a lot of good things with that money versus debt repayments if there are funds available in the reserves for some reason.
If I could just get clarity, so we're saving that money? We're actually saving that, or are we just now not having to pay it because we paid it out? Like, I'm just trying to get some clarity on what this looks like, because I just keep going back to how much interest we're earning on the money that we have sitting in reserves. Like, over the next 20 years on this land, and just please correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe my math is not correct on this, but if we're looking at an average of $40,000 a year in interest, over the next the lifetime of this debenture for the next 20 years, we would realize, I'm thinking we would realize like $800,000 in interest. Am I wrong on that math?
But you're not, you have to make a payment of $67,990 per year to get that $40,000, right? So you're actually in the hole $27,000.
But you're not, because we're just paying it out in its entirety right now versus just paying it gradually. So we're just paying it gradually right now. We're making an annual payment versus the entire amount. So we have this whole pot of money sitting here collecting interest, and we have this debenture sitting here where we have to pay the full amount of it regardless if we pay it right now or we pay it off, $67,000 a year for the next 20 years. So currently we're earning $40,000 a year with this money sitting in reserves. Right now, we're paying $67,000 a year, right? So we're paying that amount, whether we're just paying it at $67,000 a year or we're just paying it in its entirety, but we lose all the interest associated with having reserves. Am I Am I correct in that thinking, or?
You're correct in this year. The interest rates are based on whatever prime is. And so in 2020 and 2021, we received far less interest. Because the interest rates were quite a bit less. And so if all years were with prime being the way it is currently, then we could look at receiving those funds. But if it dips down like it was in 2020, 2021, we'd not be looking at getting $40,000 a year in interest. We'd be getting much less, maybe $10,000 on it. And so it depends on what that interest rate is each year. In the budget, I put forward conservative numbers in the interest in the budget for revenue because of that. But we don't want to have a year where we budget, $200,000 in interest, and then the next year prime drops and interest rates drop, and now we have to cut $150,000 out of the budget of revenue because the rates are down, and now that's $150,000 that is no longer offsetting taxation for revenue. So budget-wise, it's not going to affect much. But I think it was Councillor Florence or Mayor Martina who said that it kind of puts us in that hole because we are paying that $27,000 additionally each month to make those payments. So if we're high interest rates now, we're only in the hole $27,000 on this particular debenture. If interest rates are quite a bit lower, we're now 27, 37, 47,000 that's being paid out additionally. If this is paid out, then it would be a net availability of $27,000 each year to do something with.
Would it be wise to hold on to it as long as we're collecting high interest and then explore doing this when interest rates go down? Because I can't get over the idea that we're actually not talking about an actual gain of money of $27,000. It's still our money, and it was our money. We're not talking about gain, right? We're talking about just freeing up that from one particular source as opposed to another. So if we're holding in reserves and we say, okay, well, we don't want to pay that additional $27,000 from our operating, revenue, then we maybe pay it from reserves or something to that effect. I'm not sure. But it just seems to me that if we're making a lot of money in interest, that we don't necessarily want to pull it and pay, unless we realize the huge cost savings by paying it out right now. It says, oh, they're going to, we're not going to have to pay X amount of interest on it then it would make sense. But so the conversation is just about freeing up that annual money. Is there another way to free up that annual money?
It comes down to resource allocation, and if we look at this as just an expense, then it's just how does council want to deal with this particular expense? And so this is money that is, if money is going towards one expense and it doesn't do more, can be used elsewhere. It's an exercise for council to determine what that is, and that's kind of the idea behind these other options. It's really just for information for council to look at. These are some things that could be done. There's no requirement to pay this out. In fact, the province has made it clear that they don't care. And so for 20 years, it could continue on and be no issue. It's just if council would like to have those funds available elsewhere to use, then that is something that could be done. But it's definitely up to council to decide to pay it out, to partially pay it out, to pay it out fully, to leave it alone.
I'm excited that we're having this conversation because we've never had that kind of conversation at this table before. So first, I want to say thank you so much for bringing this forward to have this conversation. But I'm wondering if we're thinking that perhaps when we're at a place where we want to take on additional debt for another capital project, or we'd like to explore a new debenture, that then maybe we make our move at that time, or when interest rates go down and we're not seeing so much sort of revenue being generated from these funds sitting in, right? I don't think it has to be a now kind of a decision.
Yeah, I think our math is, I'm not very good at math, but I'm seeing this as a gain. Like, I'm still seeing this as $27,000 in the better, regardless of if we're getting interest or not. Am I wrong? I don't know, like,
You're both right. In fact, you're all right.
you know, like,
As Mr. Passy actually identified, it really depends on the year. The challenge that we have is long-term, what happens over the duration. It does, you have to pay the amount. Regardless, you pay it now, pay it later. What it does is it frees up the capacity to take what we're paying, it frees that up for council to actually utilize, reallocate. Yes, what you are missing is the interest, and the only time we'll be able to determine whether or not it was a good call is at the end of the payment in 20 years. You take what was paid, you take what you gained in interest, and it was either a good decision or a less good decision.
Or we take the money, we pay it all in, and we know that we just paid the interest anyways on that. And we haven't gained any interest from it over here. So we now paid this much interest and we received that little interest, right? So we're not realizing a gain of $27,000. We're realizing a gain of now having an additional operating funds, $27,000, rather than from a different pot. That's all it is. It's not, we're not saving money. We're just moving it from one place to the other. And in fact, we're losing money because we're moving it from one pot to the other.
So this is presented for information, if I can, your worship, members of council, this is presented information for these types of considerations and the clarity we're generating here in conversation. And the way to move forward with this would be for a member of council to bring a motion. However, what we can do is we can set this conversation again on the January 17th agenda, and that will give Mr. Passy time perhaps to create really fun charts he can put up on the screen for you.
The best charts.
They can actually, we can attempt to speculate on some of this and show the comparisons just so that everybody is on the same page. We'll determine whether it's going to be individual or just as a suite. The recommendation perhaps being, look at these four, here's the spending, here's the savings, here's what could be reallocated, here's what possibly could be gained. The challenge, as we say, is identifying what interest rates are in 10 years.
so with that, I move that the council receive the, receive the Director of Corporate Services brief on town ventures, and that council instruct the CAO to gather additional information to come back to us in the new year, so that we can have a better idea about what this looks like. So in terms of the interest stuff, but also in terms of paying them out and what that could look like for us. Any discussion? There's none, I'll call a question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I meant to ask, is there some way that we can maybe also just have an idea of sort of some of our big capital projects that we might be looking at coming up that might require us to free up some space as well, right? To make that informed decision too, right?
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on now to the Director of Operations. All right, so we have a report from our Director of Operations here. And is there anything from here that you would like to highlight for us, or would you like me to just go to questions?
No, just if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Questions from anyone?
750 kilograms, that's pretty remarkable. There's some savings there from landfill.
It was quite light for leaf pickup this year. We had snow on the ground, so I imagine probably 3/4 of our leaves are still under snow. A lot of people didn't get the chance to collect them because boom, got that. So we usually collect quite a bit more than that. Pumpkins were a big success.
That's great.
Wonderful.
All right, if there's no questions, would somebody like to make a motion to receive the report? Move, Councilor Evans.
Sure. I move to receive the Director of Operations report for information.
Any discussion? If no, we'll call the question. All in favor? That's very, thank you. All right, so now we're gonna move on to correspondence. So we do have two pieces of correspondence that we have in our package. The first one from Kevin Ferguson, the Mayor of the Town of Noka. and that was a letter to Minister Coffey regarding the state of the ambulance service, as well as one from Marion and Canadian National Police Federation, the call to action for government of Alberta. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the correspondence?
I'll make that motion
Great, thank you.
to accept correspondence.
Is there any discussion on these items? If there's not, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried, thank you. And then, can I get a motion to go into closed session at 7:47 PM? Councilor Barnes,
I move that we go into closed session at 7:37 p.m.
any discussion? Call the question. All in favor?
Oh, I
Okay,
can.
okay, that's carried, thank you.
Yes, I guess so. Way over.
up at 9:30. I thought I was gonna sleep in, so.
We can do sound check. Good?
We'll do some teams right now.
Yeah.
Quotations.
Everyone good?
I move that we return to open session at 8:57 PM.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. So I'm going to make a motion that council extend the contract of interim chief administrative officer, Kaufman, from December 31st, 2022 to February 28th, 2023. And further, that council delete section 9.6 of the interim CAO contract to permit the interim CAO to fulfill his teaching obligations at the University of Lethbridge, commencing January 4th, 2023. Is there any discussion on this? If there's none, I will call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And then can I get a motion to adjourn at 8:50?
Your worship, sorry, I have the closed session conferences motion.
Oh, yes.
For you. I have somebody moving it.
Yes, we
Councillor
do.
Ackermans.
Mhm.
Move the council direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to number 1, land transaction, section 24 of Freedom of Information Protection Privacy Act, housing strategy, section 24, FOIP, C, interim CEO contract extension, section 16.1 of FOIP, and D, CAO hiring process, section 19 of FOIP, remain confidential pursuant to the sections mentioned above.
Great job.
Well done, let's go. Thank you.
Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
And then now can I get a motion to adjourn at 8:58?
I'll make that motion.
Discussion. All in favor? We are adjourned.
So I just, when you were talking about, the value that we place on council.
Yeah.